Hello, and welcome to Unstuck by Nicole, a little perspective in your pocket to help you think differently, lead differently, and hopefully get unstuck from whatever is keeping you where you are. Today, I'd like to ask you a question. When was the last time you truly felt like you? Now, not the version of you that's juggling work or looking after everyone else, or even trying to keep all of those plates spinning, but just you. It's a surprisingly difficult question to answer, and I think that's because losing yourself rarely happens in one big moment. It happens quietly. And today I'd like to explore why that happens and why I don't think feeling lost is something to fear. Looking back over my own life, I can see exactly how I slowly drifted away from myself. It wasn't because I made one terrible decision or something catastrophic happened. If anything, it probably looked like I was doing all the right things. I was working hard, I was building my career, I was supporting those around me, I was dependable, and I was somebody people could count on. And from the outside, it probably looked like everything was going really well. But underneath that, something was very slowly changing. And it was almost without me noticing. I found myself saying yes when I really wanted to say no, and I was taking on another responsibility because I knew that I could actually handle it, not necessarily because I wanted to take it on. I became that reliable one and the one that would help people in all situations. And honestly, none of those decisions felt wrong to me. In fact, they felt very true to me, and it also felt very kind and incredibly supportive. But over time, I realised something. Every time I ignored what I needed in favour of what somebody else needed, I was quietly teaching myself and my nervous system that my own voice could wait. Now, I didn't lose it overnight. It just simply became a little bit quieter until eventually I stopped hearing it altogether. I've often wondered whether we lose ourselves because life becomes busier or because we slowly become attached to the roles we've learnt to play. Take a moment just to think about that. Over the years, we've all become known for certain things. You might be the dependable one, the strong one, the peacekeeper, the leader, the organiser, even the person that everybody turns to when they need advice. And there is nothing wrong with any of those roles. In many ways, they're part of being human. We naturally adapt to the people around us and to the situations that we find ourselves in. Now, the problem isn't that we wear different hats. The problem is when we become so familiar with wearing them that we forget what it feels like to be ourselves when none of them are needed. I think that's one of the quietest ways that we lose ourselves. Not because somebody asks us to, but because over time we stop responding from who we are and start responding from who we've become known to be. And that's a very subtle difference, but I think it's one of the most important differences that we can recognise. Now, I've personally seen it in leaders I've coached over the years. People who appear incredibly confident, really successful, very respected, the type of people that others naturally look up to. And from the outside, everything appears to be working. But then I'll ask them a really simple question. What do you want? And sometimes there's complete silence for quite a significant period of time. And it's not because they don't necessarily have the answer. It's because they haven't asked themselves that question in a very long time. I don't think that's because they've become somebody else. I think they've simply spent so long being who everybody else needs them to be that they've stopped checking in with themselves. And I sometimes wonder if this is why so many people spend years and years searching for their purpose, as though it's waiting somewhere in the future. That perfect career, that perfect opportunity, or just that one thing that they are meant to do. I've never truly seen it completely that way. In fact, I think we've put an enormous amount of pressure on ourselves by believing it has to arrive as one extraordinary moment. What if it doesn't? What if the feeling we're searching for has much less to do with finding something and much more to do with coming back to ourselves? For me, it isn't about doing something bigger. It's about becoming more aligned. It's about waking up and feeling at home in your own life, Not because everything is perfect, but because your decisions, your values, and the way you spend your time finally begin moving in the same direction. Suddenly the search starts to feel quite different. It doesn't require changing your whole life overnight, but sometimes it simply begins with one honest decision. And the longer I've reflected on all of this, the more I've come to believe that feeling lost isn't actually the problem. I think it's the awareness. For so long, we move through life responding to what's needed of us. We become who our family need us to be, who our colleagues rely on us to be, and who our friends have always known us to be. We get so used to living that version of ourselves that we stop noticing how disconnected we've become from the person underneath it all. Then something will shift. Sometimes it might be burnout. Sometimes it's a conversation that stays with you longer than expected. And sometimes it's a quiet moment when, for reasons you can't quite explain, life suddenly doesn't feel like it fits anymore. And as uncomfortable as those moments can be, I've started to see them differently. Not as a sign that something is wrong with us, but as a sign that something within us is asking to be heard. And looking back now, I don't think feeling lost was ever the problem. The problem was believing that feeling lost meant something was wrong with me. It didn't. It was simply the moment I became aware that I'd drifted away from myself. And that changed everything. Because if that's true, then perhaps feeling lost isn't the end of the story. Perhaps it's the beginning of a different one. Those moments do not define you. They are here to jumpstart the reintroduction of you to yourself. Perhaps that's your mind, your body, and your soul gently saying, "Hello, it's been a while. Let's find our way back to each other." If you've listened this far, I'd love you to notice something this week. Notice the moments where you're about to automatically say yes, the moments where you're about to respond the way people expect you to, the moments where you put your own thoughts, needs, or feelings to one side without even realizing you've done it. Don't judge yourself in these moments. Don't try and change everything overnight. Just notice. Because awareness almost always comes before change. And perhaps ask yourself one gentle question. What would feel more like me? Not what's the biggest decision I need to make. Just very simply, what would feel more like me? It might be a conversation. It might be protecting an hour of your time. It might be saying no. It might be saying yes. Only you know the answer. But I have a feeling that your body probably already does this too. And sometimes we just need to become quiet enough to hear it. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's conversation got you thinking and you're someone who enjoys reading, you'll find this perspective as a journal on my website too. And if somebody came to mind while you were listening to this, perhaps they need to hear the conversation too. And if it feels right, I'd love you to share it with them. Until next time, keep a little perspective in your pocket.